The Vampire King's hand closed around Willa Ashford's wrist like an iron shackle, and his words cut through the moonlit gallery with brutal finality. "You will leave this place tonight and never return, or I will make certain you regret every breath you take in my presence." Willa wrenched her arm free, tears burning hot trails down her cheeks as she stumbled backward. The museum gala continued below them, oblivious partygoers dancing beneath crystal chandeliers while her heart shattered on the balcony above. She'd spent 3 months working up the courage to approach Lucien Mordaunt, 3 months cataloging the strange pull she felt toward the enigmatic philanthropist who moved through London's elite circles like winter itself. And this was how he responded to her confession, with cruelty so sharp it stole her breath. "I understand," she whispered, hating how her voice broke. "I'm sorry I bothered you." She fled before he could see her completely fall apart, her heels clicking against marble as she ran through the corridor. Behind her, she thought she heard him call her name, but she didn't stop. Couldn't stop. The humiliation was too raw, too consuming. Willa burst through the museum's side exit into the October night, gasping for air that felt too thick in her lungs. The London streets were slick with recent rain, reflecting streetlights in pools of amber and gold. She walked blindly, not caring about direction, just needing distance between herself and Lucien's rejection. She'd been so stupid. What had she expected? That the impossibly beautiful, impossibly wealthy Lucien Mordaunt would welcome the attention of a graduate student who worked part-time at the British Museum to pay her rent, that he'd be flattered. She'd noticed how he only attended evening events, how his pale skin seemed to glow under artificial light, how his antiquated speech patterns suggested someone far older than he appeared. Willa turned down a narrow street between old brick buildings, using the shortcut toward the tube station. Her phone buzzed, probably her roommate asking where she'd gone, but she ignored it. She just wanted to get home, crawl into bed, and forget this entire mortifying night. The footsteps behind her didn't register at first. London was never truly empty, even at midnight, but when they quickened, matching her pace, ice slid down her spine. "Lost, sweetheart?" The voice was rough, eager. "Bit late for a pretty thing like you to be alone." Willa's heart hammered. She walked faster, not looking back. The street stretched endlessly before her, the distant glow of the main road seeming miles away. Why hadn't she stayed on the busy streets? Why hadn't she called a car? "Don't be rude. We just want to talk." Another voice, this one behind her and to the left. There were at least 2 of them. She broke into a run, her small clutch purse clutched against her chest. Behind her, laughter echoed off the brick walls, and the footsteps became a pursuit. Terror blanked her mind of everything except the primal need to escape. A figure stepped out from a doorway ahead, blocking her path. Willa skidded to a halt, spinning to find the other 2 men closing in from behind. 3 of them, all large, all grinning with an anticipation that made her stomach turn. "Please," she said, hating the tremor in her voice. "I don't have much money, but you can have my purse." "We're not interested in your purse," the one in front said, taking a step closer. His eyes dragged over her body in a way that made her skin crawl. Willa looked around desperately for anything, a weapon, an escape route, a witness. The windows above were dark. The street was a canyon of shadows. She was alone. Then the temperature dropped so suddenly her breath misted in the air. One of the men behind her made a choked sound. Willa spun to see him lifted off his feet by a pale hand wrapped around his throat. Lucien stood there, white hair gleaming in the dim light, his face a mask of such cold fury it barely looked human. His eyes... God, his eyes were wrong, too bright, too red, reflecting light like an animal's. She said no, Lucien said softly, and there was death in that gentle voice. The man clawed at Lucien's hand, feet kicking uselessly in the air. The other 2 attackers stumbled backward, and one pulled a knife. Lucien didn't even glance at him. He simply threw the man he was holding into the brick wall with inhuman strength. The sound of impact made Willa flinch, bone and brick meeting with sickening force. The one with the knife lunged. Lucien moved so fast he blurred, catching the man's wrist and twisting. The crack of breaking bones echoed in the alley. The knife clattered to the ground. Before the man could even scream, Lucien had him by the throat too, lifting him effortlessly. The 3rd man ran. Lucien let him go, his attention fixed on the 2 he held. In the dim light, Willa saw his mouth, saw the fangs that definitely, impossibly, had not been there at the gala. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. "If you or your friends come near her again," Lucien said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if you so much as think her name, I will find you, and what I do to you will make you beg for the mercy of death." He released them both, and they collapsed to the wet pavement. "Run!" They ran, limping and cradling broken bones, disappearing into the shadows. Lucien turned to Willa, and for a moment they simply stared at each other. His eyes were fading back to their normal ice blue, but the fangs remained white and sharp in the streetlight. He looked like something from a nightmare, beautiful and terrible and utterly inhuman. "What are you?" Willa breathed. Pain flashed across his features. "What I warned you to stay away from." He took a step toward her, and she instinctively stepped back. He stopped immediately, something breaking in his expression. "I need to get you somewhere safe. There are others who will have sensed the violence, who will come hunting. Please, Willa, let me protect you." "You have fangs," she said, hysteria creeping into her voice. "You threw a man like he weighed nothing. Your eyes." "I know." His hands were raised, placating. "I know how I appear. I know you're frightened. But right now, you're in terrible danger, and it's my fault. There are things in this city that hunt in the dark, and the scent of fear draws them like blood in water. I can keep you safe, but you have to trust me." "Trust you? You told me you'd make me regret breathing near you." Agony crossed his face. "Because this would happen. Because once you were connected to me, you would become a target. Because I am damned and cursed, and I didn't want to drag you into my world." His voice roughened. "But it's too late now. They saw me protect you. They'll wonder why a king would shield a human, and they'll use that curiosity to hurt you." "A king?" Willa's voice pitched higher. "What are you talking about?" A sound came from the far end of the alley, footsteps, multiple pairs moving with unnatural coordination. Lucien's head snapped toward them, his body going rigid. "No more time," he said. "Willa, please. Come with me or die here. Those are your only choices." The footsteps were getting closer, and with them came a feeling like pressure against her skin, like the air before a storm. Every instinct screamed danger. Willa looked at Lucien's outstretched hand, pale and steady in the darkness. She looked at the shadows where those coordinated footsteps approached. She thought about the men he'd thrown aside like toys, about his impossible speed and strength and those fangs. She took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, cool but not cold, and then the world tilted. Wind rushed past her face, the alley blurred into streaks of light and dark, and her stomach lurched with the sensation of impossible speed. She gasped, clinging to Lucien as the city became abstract around them. When the world steadied, they were somewhere else entirely. Willa found herself in an enormous room, lit by hundreds of candles in wrought iron sconces. The walls were stone, ancient, and covered with tapestries depicting battles and coronations. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, lost in shadow. Furniture that looked like it belonged in a palace, all dark wood and rich velvet, filled the space. "Where are we?" she managed, still gripping Lucien's hand because her legs felt unsteady. "Beneath London," he said quietly. "In a place your kind haven't walked for centuries. My court, my home." He released her hand carefully, stepping back to give her space. "You're safe here. These wards have held for 1,000 years." Willa turned in a slow circle, trying to process. Beneath London, Vampire Court, 1,000 years. Her mind kept skittering away from the impossibility of it all. "I think I need to sit down." Lucien guided her to a velvet settee, his touch careful, as if she might shatter. When she sank onto it, he moved away, putting distance between them. He stood near the fireplace, and in the flickering light, his otherworldliness was impossible to ignore. His skin was too pale, too perfect. His white hair fell to his shoulders in a way that should have looked feminine, but instead made him look like some ancient warrior poet. And those eyes, even their normal blue, was too intense, too vivid. "You're really a vampire," she said. "I am." No hesitation, no apology. And a king?" "Of what remains of London's vampire bloodlines, yes. There are courts in every major city, ancient families with older claims than human royalty." He watched her carefully, as if monitoring her for signs of hysteria. "We've existed alongside humanity for millennia, hidden in plain sight." Willa's mind raced. The gala. You're always at evening events. You funded the museum's medieval European collection. All those artifacts from Eastern Europe were mine originally, or belonged to families I knew. A ghost of a smile. When you've lived as long as I have, you accumulate belongings. Museums are a convenient way to preserve history. How long? I was born in 1247 in the Carpathian Mountains. I became king of this court in 1689. He said it so matter-of-factly, as if he were telling her his address. Willa's breath came short. Nearly 800 years old. She was sitting in a room with someone who had lived for 8 centuries. This is insane. Yes, he agreed softly. It must seem that way. You said at the gala, you said I should leave and never come back. You were trying to protect me? From what? Lucien turned to stare into the fire, his profile sharp as cut glass. From exactly what happened tonight. From becoming a target because of my interest in you. From the eyes that are always watching a king, looking for weaknesses to exploit. He paused. From me? You saved me. After I put you in danger. His voice was bitter. I should have stayed away from you from the first moment I saw you in the museum, cataloging that collection of medieval manuscripts. I should have resisted the pull. But I was selfish. I convinced myself I could admire you from a distance, that no one would notice my attention. I was wrong. Willa thought back over the past months, seeing things differently now. The times she'd felt watched while working late at the museum. The way certain wealthy patrons had started asking her questions about her research, her life, her connections. The strange, pale woman who'd followed her onto the tube 2 weeks ago, only to disappear at the next stop. They were watching me, she said slowly. Even before tonight. Lucien's jaw tightened. My enemies have been watching you since I first spoke to you, waiting to see if you were important to me. Tonight confirmed it. He finally turned to face her. I'm sorry, Willa. You stumbled into the middle of a war you didn't know existed, and I didn't protect you the way I should have. What kind of war? He sighed, and there was a weariness in it that spoke of centuries. There are factions who believe I'm too lenient with humans, who think we should rule openly, use our power to dominate rather than hide. They've been pushing for changes to our laws, and I've been blocking them. An uprising has been brewing for decades. His eyes met hers. If they could prove I care for a human, they would use it as evidence that I'm unfit to rule, that I've been compromised, and they would use you to hurt me. The pieces clicked together. So you tried to drive me away at the gala, to make it seem like I meant nothing to you. Yes. Simple. Honest. It was cruel. But I thought if they believed you were just another human with a passing infatuation, they might leave you alone once you stopped trying to approach me. But it didn't work. No, because I watched you leave and every instinct I have screamed at me to follow. So I did. I kept my distance, but I followed to make sure you got home safely. And when those men attacked you, his hands clenched, I couldn't let them hurt you. I moved without thinking, revealed myself, and now there's no doubt in anyone's mind that you matter to me. Willa should have been terrified. She was trapped underground with a vampire who'd just admitted she was a liability in some ancient political struggle. But all she felt was a strange, intense awareness of him, the way the candlelight played across his features, the controlled power in every line of his body, the pain in his eyes when he looked at her. Why do I matter to you? She asked quietly. Lucien went very still. For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because when I saw you bent over those illuminated manuscripts, reading medieval Latin with such focus and joy, it was the first time in 2 centuries that I felt something other than duty. Because your laugh sounds like music I'd forgotten existed. Because you see beauty in the same old things I've spent lifetimes preserving, and it made the weight of those years feel less crushing. His voice dropped. Because I am ancient and tired and so very alone, and you made me remember what it felt like to want something for myself rather than for my court. The raw honesty in his words stole Willa's breath. She stood, taking a tentative step toward him. He tracked the movement like a predator, but didn't retreat. What happens now? She asked. Now I keep you safe until I can neutralize the threat. There's a vampire named Constantine. He leads the opposition to my rule. He'll be the one who tries to use you against me. I need to meet with the court counsel, make it clear that any move against you is a move against me personally. Establish you under my formal protection." He swallowed. "And then, when you're safe, I'll arrange for you to return to your life with guards you'll never see, watching to ensure no one harms you." "Return to my life?" Something twisted in Willa's chest. "You'll just let me go?" "What choice do I have?" His voice was rough. "Keeping you here is selfish. You have a human life, friends, family, a career. You deserve sunlight and normal days and someone who can grow old with you, not an immortal creature who can only offer you darkness and danger." "Shouldn't that be my choice?" Lucien's eyes widened slightly. "Willa, you've told me what your enemies want, what your court needs, what you think is best for me, but you haven't asked what I want." She took another step closer, close enough now that she could see the way his chest moved with unnecessary breath, a habit from his human life. "I was drawn to you too, you know. Not just because you're beautiful, though you are, but because of the way you touched those artifacts like they were precious memories. The way you talked about history like you'd lived it, which I guess you did. The way you looked at me sometimes like I was the most remarkable thing you'd encountered in a very long time." "You are," he breathed. "Then stop making decisions for me. Stop trying to protect me from yourself." She was close enough now to touch him, though she kept her hands at her sides. "I don't want to go back to pretending the supernatural doesn't exist. I don't want to forget you, and I definitely don't want you deciding my feelings aren't real because I'm human and supposedly don't understand what I'm getting into." "You could die," Lucien said harshly. "Humans are fragile. You could age and wither while I remain unchanged. You could be killed by my enemies just to wound me. I could also get hit by a bus tomorrow," Willa interrupted, "or develop cancer, or fall in love with a perfectly normal human man who breaks my heart. Life is risk, Lucien, and I'd rather face danger with you than safety without you." He stared at her like she'd wounded him. "You don't know what you're saying. Then explain it to me. Don't push me away, educate me. Tell me about your world, your enemies, the dangers. Let me make an informed choice instead of deciding I'm too fragile to handle the truth." For a long moment, Lucien said nothing. Then he turned away, his shoulders tight. "There's something you need to understand about what I am, about what all vampires are. We're not romantic figures from novels. We're predators. We feed on blood to survive, and the instinct to hunt is woven into everything we are." He looked back at her, and there was something dark and warning in his expression. "When I'm near you, I can hear your heartbeat. I can smell the blood moving through your veins, and part of me, the part that's monster more than man, wants to taste you, to feed. Every moment I spend in your presence is a battle against that instinct." Instead of fear, Willa felt a strange heat curl through her. "And yet you've never hurt me. You've saved me, protected me, fought your own nature to keep me safe." She held his gaze. "That's not a monster. That's someone with the strength to choose what they want to be. The strength is finite," he said quietly. "Eventually, every vampire faces a moment when the hunger wins, when they lose control. If that happened with you, it won't. You can't know that." "You're right. I can't." Willa took a breath. "But I know you've lived nearly 800 years. I know you're a king, which means you've had to maintain control in ways I probably can't even imagine. And I know that when you look at me, I see someone fighting himself because he cares more about my safety than his own desires. That's enough for me to trust you." Lucien closed his eyes. "You humble me and terrify me. I've fought wars, faced death, ruled over beings who've forgotten what mercy means. But the thought of failing you, of becoming the monster you insist I'm not, that's a fear I've never known before." Willa reached out slowly, giving him time to move away. When he didn't, she placed her hand against his chest, feeling the stillness beneath. No heartbeat, no warmth. But somehow, he felt more alive than anyone she'd ever touched. "Then don't fail me," she said simply, "and let me help you fight whatever's coming." His hand came up to cover hers, his fingers cool and careful. "If you stay in my world, there are things you need to understand. laws and customs that govern how vampires interact with humans, protection that must be formalized. You'd essentially be declaring yourself under my care, which in vampire society means—" He paused. "It means you'd be mine. Not as property, but as someone I'm responsible for, someone I've claimed." Claimed? It's an old term. Essentially, it means any vampire who harms you would face my retribution. It means you'd have status in vampire society as someone connected to royalty. But it also means you'd be bound to me in the eyes of the court until I released you. His thumb traced across her knuckles. I won't lie to you, some would see it as possessive, as archaic, but it's the only way to ensure your safety. And what would you see it as? Lucien's eyes met hers, and the intensity there made her breath catch. As a privilege I don't deserve. As a chance to keep you safe. As a claiming that goes far deeper than politics. His voice dropped. I would see it as making official what my heart already knows, that you are mine to protect, mine to cherish, mine to guard with everything I am. Heat flooded through Willa at the possessive words. She should probably object to the archaic language, to the implication of ownership. But the way he said it, with such reverence, made it sound less like subjugation and more like a vow. Then claim me, she whispered. His hand tightened on hers. Willa, I'm not going back to my normal life and pretending this doesn't exist. I'm not walking away from you, so either we do this the right way with your court's protection and whatever formal declarations you need, or we figure out another option. But I'm staying. For the first time since she'd met him, Lucien smiled, a real smile that transformed his severe features into something breathtaking. You're certain? Once this is done, once the court knows, there's no going back. I'm certain. He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent electricity racing up her arm. Then at moonrise tomorrow, I'll present you to the court and make the formal claim. Until then, you stay here, where the wards will keep you safe. He hesitated. There are guest chambers prepared. You'll have privacy, comfort, anything you need. Where will you be? Dealing with the aftermath of tonight. There will be those who want to challenge my decision to protect you. I need to make it clear that challenging me on this would be unwise. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. And I need to have a conversation with Constantine about appropriate boundaries. Is that going to be violent? Probably, he said it so calmly. But necessary. Constantine respects strength. If I show any weakness now, any hesitation, he'll push harder. Willa's stomach twisted with worry. Be careful. His expression softened. I've survived 8 centuries of vampire politics. I'll survive this. He turned her hand over, his fingers ghosting across her palm. Rest. Tomorrow will be overwhelming, and you'll need your strength. A tall, pale woman appeared in the doorway. She'd made no sound approaching, and Willa jumped. The woman's white hair was braided in an intricate crown, and her elegant features were set in cool assessment as she looked at Willa. Seraphine, Lucien said. This is Willa Ashford. She's under my protection. Please show her to the Rose Chamber and ensure she has everything she requires. Seraphine's eyebrows rose fractionally. The Rose Chamber? That's not been used since— I'm aware. His tone brooked no argument. Willa is to be treated as my honored guest. Make sure the entire household understands. A slow smile curved Seraphine's lips. Of course, my king. It will be my pleasure. She turned to Willa, and her smile became warmer. Come, little human, let's get you settled. I suspect you've had quite an evening. Willa looked at Lucien, not wanting to leave him, but he nodded encouragingly. Go, I'll see you tomorrow evening. And Willa? He waited until she looked back at him. Thank you for your trust. I won't fail you. Following Seraphine through winding stone corridors, Willa tried to absorb everything. The underground complex was enormous hallways, branched off in multiple directions, some lit by electric lights retrofitted into ancient sconces, others still using candles. They passed rooms filled with antiques, libraries with floor-to-ceiling shelves, and what looked like a training hall, where several pale figures sparred with inhuman speed. How many vampires live here? Willa asked. In the court complex? About 40 at present, though many of Lucien's subjects maintain their own residences throughout London. We gather here for court business, and when the king requires our presence. Seraphine glanced at her. You're handling this remarkably well. Most humans would be hysterical. I think I'm in shock, Willa admitted. It hasn't fully sunk in yet. Fair enough. They climbed a spiral staircase. For what it's worth, I've served Lucien for 300 years, and I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Whatever you are to him, it's not casual. Willa's heart skipped. What was the rose chamber you mentioned? You seemed surprised he wanted me there. Seraphine's expression became careful. It was his wife's chamber. Long ago, before she passed, he's kept it preserved but unused for nearly 2 centuries. Putting you there is significant. He was married? The thought sent an unexpected pang through Willa. Once, very long ago, she was human. Seraphine stopped before a heavy wooden door. She died of illness in 1832. Lucien loved her deeply, and her death nearly destroyed him. He's kept himself apart from emotional entanglement since. Until you. The weight of that settled over Willa as Seraphine opened the door. The chamber beyond was breathtaking, a large room with stone walls softened by tapestries in rose and cream. A massive 4-poster bed dominated one wall, its curtains a deep burgundy. Windows that must have been enchanted somehow showed a nighttime garden, complete with moonlight and gently moving trees, despite being underground. Illusion, Seraphine explained, seeing Willa's confusion. Spell work from our witch allies. Lucien thought humans would find it easier with a view, even a false one. The bathing room is through there, and you'll find clothes in the wardrobe that should fit. I took the liberty of having modern items brought in, though some of the historical pieces are quite beautiful if you're interested. Thank you, Willa said sincerely. Seraphine moved to leave, then paused. He'll keep you safe. Whatever comes, Lucien will stand between you and anything that threatens you. But be warned, vampire court politics are vicious. Tomorrow, you'll meet beings who've spent centuries perfecting cruelty. Don't show fear and don't show weakness. Hold your head high and remember you're under the protection of the king himself. After Seraphine left, Willa explored the chamber, her mind racing. She found a nightgown in the wardrobe silk, modern, exactly her size. The bathing room featured a large tub that filled with hot water at the turn of an ornate tap. Someone had left rose petals floating on the surface. As she sank into the bath, the events of the night finally crashed over her. She'd confessed her feelings to Lucien, been attacked, discovered vampires were real, been brought to an underground court, and tomorrow she'd be formally claimed by a vampire king in front of his entire court. Any rational person would be terrified, but all Willa felt was a strange, fierce certainty that she'd made the right choice. She thought about the pain in Lucien's eyes when he'd spoken of his loneliness, the way he'd fought his own nature to protect her, the reverence in his voice when he'd called her his to cherish. She was falling in love with him. Maybe had been since the first time she'd caught him studying a medieval manuscript with such tender focus. And now she had a chance to actually be with him, to explore this impossible connection. Willa climbed into the enormous bed, exhausted but too keyed up to sleep. She stared at the enchanted window showing its false garden and wondered what Lucien was doing. Was he safe? Was the confrontation with Constantine violent? Would he really be able to protect her from whatever political machinations were unfolding? Eventually, exhaustion won. She drifted into uneasy sleep, dreaming of pale figures moving through shadows and ice-blue eyes that held centuries of secrets. She woke to find Seraphine in her room, laying out clothes. The vampire smiled at her. Good evening. It's nearly sunset. The court gathers in 2 hours, so we should prepare. What time is it? Just after 7 in the evening. You slept all day. Seraphine gestured to a tray of food on a side table. I brought you something to eat. I'm afraid none of us remember human dietary needs particularly well, but I did my best. The tray held fresh fruit, bread, cheese, and tea. Willa's stomach growled, reminding her she hadn't eaten since before the gala. This is perfect, thank you. As she ate, Seraphine explained what would happen. The court gathering is formal. Lucien will present you and make the claim publicly. Others may challenge his right to claim a human, but that's largely ceremonial. No one would actually dare oppose him directly. After the formalities, there will be a reception where you'll meet the court members. Stay close to either Lucien or myself. Don't accept food or drink from anyone else. Why not? Vampire blood can have effects on humans. Some court members might find it amusing to see you intoxicated or hallucinating. Best to avoid it entirely. Willa swallowed hard. Right. Don't drink anything suspicious at the vampire court gathering. Got it. After eating, Seraphine helped her dress. The gown was stunning, a deep sapphire blue that matched her eyes, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt. It was modern in cut, but had a timeless elegance that seemed appropriate for a vampire court. Seraphine arranged Willa's dark hair in an intricate style, leaving soft curls framing her face. You look beautiful, Seraphine said, studying her work. Lucien is going to forget how to speak when he sees you. I'm terrified, Willa admitted. Good. A little fear will keep you sharp. Seraphine's expression became serious. Remember what I said, don't show weakness. These are old beings who respect strength. If anyone challenges you or says something cutting, don't look to Lucien for rescue. Handle it yourself, at least initially. He'll intervene if necessary, but you'll earn more respect if you can hold your own. A knock at the door made them both turn. Seraphine opened it to reveal Lucien, and Willa's breath caught. He wore all black, a perfectly tailored suit that looked both modern and somehow timeless. His white hair was pulled back, emphasizing the sharp planes of his face. But it was his eyes that held her. They blazed with an intensity that made her skin flush. Leave us, he said quietly to Seraphine, never looking away from Willa. Seraphine smiled knowingly and slipped out, closing the door behind her. Lucien crossed the room slowly, and Willa was reminded of a predator stalking prey. But there was nothing threatening in his expression, only awe. You're breathtaking, he said when he stood before her. I knew you would be, but still you've rendered me speechless. Seraphine said the same thing, Willa said, smiling. She's wise. He reached out, his fingers ghosting along her jaw. How are you? Did you sleep well? Has anyone bothered you? I slept fine. Everyone's been kind. She caught his hand, holding it against her cheek. How did it go with Constantine? His expression hardened. As expected, he's rallying opposition to the claim, arguing that a king cannot afford human attachments. But he won't move against you directly. I made sure he understood the consequences if he did. Did you hurt him? I reminded him why I'm king and he isn't. Lucien's thumb stroked her cheekbone. There will be challenges tonight. Others who'll question my decision, who'll test both of us. I need you to know whatever is said, whatever accusations are made, I won't waver. You are mine to protect, and I will make that clear to everyone present. The possessive words sent heat through her. I can handle it. I know you can. You're stronger than you realize. He leaned closer, and Willa's heart raced. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but instead he pressed his lips to her forehead, a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. Stay close to me tonight. Don't leave my side unless Seraphine is with you. There are those who would love to catch you alone, to frighten you or worse. I trust you, Willa said simply. Something like pain crossed his face. I'll spend eternity trying to be worthy of that trust. The court chamber was enormous, easily the size of a cathedral. Vaulted ceilings disappeared into shadow above them, and the walls were lined with ancient tapestries depicting vampire history battles, coronations, scenes of courtly life from centuries past. Hundreds of candles filled the space with flickering light, casting everything in gold and shadow. And, filling the chamber, were vampires. They stood in groups, conversations flowing in multiple languages. All of them turned as Lucien entered with Willa on his arm, and the weight of their attention was suffocating. Every single one was pale, beautiful, and utterly inhuman. Their eyes tracked Willa with interest, ranging from curious to hostile. Lucien led her to a dais at the far end of the chamber, where two throne-like chairs sat. He guided her to stand beside his throne, his hand never leaving the small of her back. My court, Lucien said, his voice carrying effortlessly through the huge space. Thank you for gathering on short notice. I have important business to conduct this evening. The vampires moved closer, forming a semicircle around the dais. Willa recognized the tall, elegant woman from earlier. Seraphine stood near the front, her expression neutral, but there were others who watched with calculation or barely concealed disdain. One vampire pushed forward a broad-shouldered man with white hair, cropped short, and eyes like chips of ice. He moved with the confidence of someone used to getting his way. "Constantine," Lucien acknowledged coolly. "My king." Constantine's tone was mocking. "I confess, when I heard you'd called a full court gathering, I expected something more important than this." His gaze raked over Willa dismissively. "Then you misunderstand the situation." Lucien's voice hardened. "I present to you Willa Ashford, a human under my formal protection. I claim her as mine before this court, and I will tolerate no threat to her safety or well-being. Any vampire who harms her will answer to me personally." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Constantine's expression darkened. "You would claim a human, bind yourself to a mortal who will be dust in a handful of decades? Have you learned nothing from—" "Careful," Lucien interrupted, and there was death in his quiet voice. "Be very careful how you finish that sentence." Constantine's jaw clenched, but he fell silent. Another vampire stepped forward, a woman who looked barely 20, with long white hair and delicate features. "Forgive me, my king, but many of us are concerned. A claimed human becomes a weakness. If your enemies discover your attachment, they'll use her against you." "Let them try," Lucien said flatly. "Anyone who moves against what is mine will learn exactly how brutal I can be when provoked. I have ruled this court for over 3 centuries. I have survived challenges, betrayals, and open warfare. A human under my protection is not a weakness, she's a line I dare anyone to cross." The menace in his words sent shivers through the crowd. Even Constantine looked wary, but another voice rose from the back, cold, feminine, dripping with disdain. "And when she ages? When she becomes old and withered while you remain unchanged, will you still claim her then? Or will you discard her like the mortal plaything she is?" Willa turned to see a stunning vampire with hair like spun silver and a face that could have launched ships. The woman's lips curved in a cruel smile. "Isolde," Lucien said, his tone arctic, "you forget yourself." "Do I? Or am I the only one willing to speak truth?" Isolde glided closer, her movements liquid. "We all remember what happened last time you cared for a human, how you nearly destroyed yourself when she died. Are you truly so eager to repeat that pain?" Willa felt Lucien tense beside her, but before he could respond, she stepped forward. Seraphine's words echoed in her mind. "Don't show weakness, handle it yourself." "You speak as if I have no say in this," Willa said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "As if I'm a passive victim in Lucien's story. But I chose this. I chose him, knowing exactly what he is and what it means. And yes, I'll age while he doesn't. Yes, I'll die while he continues. But I'd rather have whatever time we can have together than waste my brief human life being too afraid to love someone extraordinary." Silence filled the chamber. Isolde's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Bold words for someone so fragile. Do you have any idea what you've walked into? The politics, the danger, the ancient grudges that simmer in this court?" "No," Willa admitted. "I don't. But I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to face whatever comes, because the alternative is walking away from someone who makes me feel more alive than I've ever felt. So you can sneer at me for being mortal, you can call me a plaything or a weakness, but I'm not going anywhere." Isolde laughed sharp and cold. "We'll see how brave you feel when the reality of this world sinks in, little human." "Enough," Lucien's voice cracked like a whip. "Isolde, you will show respect to what is mine or you will leave my court. The choice is yours." Isolde's expression went carefully blank. After a long moment, she inclined her head. "Of course, my king. Forgive my impertinence." But her eyes promised this wasn't over. Lucien looked out over the assembled vampires. "Is there anyone else who wishes to challenge my claim? Anyone else who questions my right to protect whom I choose?" His gaze swept the crowd, daring opposition. "Speak now." No one spoke. The silence stretched, heavy with tension. "Then witness and acknowledge," Lucien commanded. "Willa Ashford is claimed, protected, and under my direct care. This is law in my court. Spread the word to every vampire in London she is untouchable." As one, the vampires inclined their heads in acknowledgement, even Constantine, though he looked like it pained him. Lucien turned to Willa, and his expression softened. He took her hand, raising it to his lips. but instead of kissing her knuckles, he turned her hand over and pressed his lips to her wrist, right over her pulse point. The gesture was intimate, possessive, and unmistakably claiming. Heat flooded through Willa at the contact, at the feel of his cool lips against her skin. When he lifted his head, his eyes blazed with something that made her breath catch. "It's done," he said quietly, for her alone. "You're mine now, in the eyes of every vampire in London." "Good," she whispered back. The formal ceremony dissolved into a reception. Vampires approached the dais in groups, offering formal acknowledgments or congratulations, though Willa could see calculation behind many of their smiles. Seraphine appeared at her elbow, introducing her to various court members, some genuinely welcoming, others coolly polite. A young-looking vampire with kind eyes and an easy smile introduced himself as Dorian. "Don't let Isolde get to you," he said conspiratorially. "She's been bitter ever since Lucien rejected her advances 2 centuries ago. She thought she'd be queen, and she's never quite forgiven him for choosing his last wife instead." 2 centuries is a long time to hold a grudge," Willa said. Dorian laughed. "You're thinking like a human. To us, 2 centuries is nothing. We have very long memories, for better or worse." As the evening wore on, Willa began to understand the complex web of relationships and politics that governed the court. There were old families with ancient bloodlines who commanded respect. There were newer vampires who'd risen through skill or cunning. There were alliances that shifted like sand and grudges that lasted lifetimes. Through it all, Lucien remained at her side, his presence a constant protection. Whenever someone's questions became too pointed or their tone too aggressive, he would intercede smoothly, redirecting the conversation. His hand never strayed far from her, resting on her back, holding her hand, a subtle claim that no one could miss. But as midnight approached, Constantine made his move. He approached the dais with several other vampires flanking him, his allies, clearly. "My king? A word in private?" Lucien's expression was unreadable. "Anything you have to say can be said here." "Very well." Constantine's smile was sharp. "I want to formally request a council vote on the human claiming. There are many of us who believe this decision affects the entire court and should be subject to review." Murmurs of agreement from his supporters. Willa felt Lucien tense. "The king's claim is absolute," Seraphine said coldly. "There's no precedent for council review." "There's no precedent for a king claiming a human in 3 centuries, Constantine countered. "Times change. Perhaps our laws should change with them." Lucien descended from the dais, moving with predatory grace until he stood inches from Constantine. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop. "You want to challenge me? Then do it properly. Challenge me for leadership of this court, and we'll settle it the old way, blood and combat. But don't hide behind political maneuvering and claim you're acting in the court's interest." Constantine held his ground, but Willa saw fear flicker in his eyes. "I'm not challenging your rule. I'm asking for transparency in decisions that affect us all. My personal life doesn't require council approval." Lucien's voice was soft, deadly. "Willa's claim is not court business, it's mine. And if you or anyone else makes it court business, if you threaten her or use her as a pawn in your power plays, I will end you. Not exile, not imprisonment. I will end your existence, and I will make it slow." The chamber had gone utterly silent. Constantine swallowed hard. "I understand, my king." "Do you?" Lucien leaned closer. "Because I want to be absolutely clear. I have lived a very long time. I've been patient, diplomatic, measured in my responses to opposition, but Willa is where my patience ends. Cross that line, and you'll discover exactly how ruthless I can be." He straightened, addressing the entire court. "That applies to all of you. This claiming is not a weakness to exploit. It's a boundary I've set, and the consequences for crossing it will be absolute." No one argued. Even Isolde looked subdued. Lucien returned to Willa's side, his hand finding hers. "I think we're done here," he said quietly. "Let's retire." He led her from the chamber, Seraphine falling into step behind them. Once they were in the corridor, away from the court's eyes, Lucien stopped and pulled Willa into his arms. "I'm sorry," he breathed against her hair. "I knew there would be opposition, but Constantine is afraid of you," Willa finished. "I could see it. They all are, even the ones who pretend not to be. Fear isn't the same as respect, and fear makes people dangerous." He pulled back to look at her. Are you all right? I know that was overwhelming. I'm okay, shaken, but okay. Willa managed to smile, though I think I made an enemy of Isolde. Lucien's jaw tightened. Isolde has been a problem for a long time. She'll push boundaries, but she won't move against you directly. She's not stupid enough to provoke me that way. What will Constantine do? Probably try to find some other way to undermine me. But for now the claim is acknowledged. You're officially under my protection, and that carries weight in vampire society. He cupped her face gently. You were magnificent tonight. The way you stood up to Isolde that took courage. I was terrified, Willa admitted. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. His thumb traced her cheekbone. You continue to amaze me. Seraphine cleared her throat delicately. I'll leave you two alone. Willa, if you need anything, pull the bell cord in your chamber. Someone will come. She smiled knowingly and disappeared down a side corridor. Alone with Lucien in the candlelit hallway, Willa became acutely aware of how close they were standing, how his hands felt against her skin, how his eyes had darkened with something that made her pulse race. I should let you rest, Lucien said, but he made no move to step away. I'm not tired. Willa's voice came out breathier than intended. I'm too wound up to sleep. Willa, her name was a warning and a plea. What? You should know being this close to you, after making the claim public, after declaring you mine in front of the entire court. He swallowed hard. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim you in other ways, to make that declaration physical. And I'm trying very hard to be honorable, to give you time to adjust, but you're making it extremely difficult. Heat flooded through Willa at his words. What if I don't want you to be honorable right now? His control visibly cracked. You don't know what you're saying. I'm saying that I want you, that I've wanted you since I first saw you, that being claimed by you in front of your court, hearing you call me yours, watching you defend me, it wasn't frightening. It was the most intense thing I've ever experienced. She stepped closer until they were pressed together. I'm saying that I'm tired of pretending this isn't what I want, what we both want. Lucien's eyes had gone that too bright red, reflecting the candlelight. If I kiss you now, I won't want to stop. Then don't stop. He groaned, and then his mouth was on hers, claiming her with a hunger that stole her breath. His kiss was everything desperate and controlled, fierce and tender, the kiss of someone who'd wanted this for far too long, and finally had permission. Willa melted into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as she kissed him back with equal fervor. He tasted like winter nights and old wine, cool and intoxicating. When his tongue traced her lower lip, she gasped, and he took advantage, deepening the kiss until she forgot where she ended, and he began. His hands were in her hair, careful not to hurt her but possessive in their grip. She felt his control fraying, felt the tremor that ran through him, and it made her feel powerful that she could affect someone so ancient and controlled so deeply. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, or Willa was breathing hard, Lucien was doing it purely out of habit. He rested his forehead against hers. My rooms, he said raggedly, not here in the hallway where anyone could see. You deserve better than that. Willa nodded, incapable of speech. He swept her into his arms with inhuman ease, moving through the corridors at a speed that blurred the world. Within moments, they were through a heavy door and into a space that could only be his private chambers. The room was huge, decorated in dark woods and deep blues. Bookshelves lined every wall, filled with volumes in multiple languages. A massive fireplace dominated one wall, flames already crackling though no one had lit them. And in the center was a bed that looked big enough for 4 people. Lucien set her down carefully, his hands lingering on her waist. We can stop any time. You just have to say the word. And I'll stop, no matter what. Instead of answering with words, Willa reached up and began undoing his tie. His hands came up to still hers, and when she looked up at him questioningly, his expression was tortured. I need you to be sure, he said, because once I have you, once I know what it's like to be with you that way, I'll never want to let you go. And I need you to understand that to understand the depth of what you mean to me before we cross this line. I love you, Willa said simply, and watched his eyes widen in shock. I know it's fast, I know it's probably crazy given everything that's happened, but I love you. I've been falling for you for months, and tonight just made it impossible to deny. So yes, I'm sure. I'm more sure about this than anything I've ever done." For a moment, Lucien simply stared at her. Then, "I've lived for nearly 800 years. I've seen empires rise and fall. I've experienced more than most beings could imagine. But hearing you say you love me, it's the most precious thing I've ever received." "Do you?" Willa hesitated. "Do you love me?" "Desperately," he breathed. "Completely. In a way that terrifies me because I know how fragile you are, how temporary this could be. But yes, I love you. I think I started loving you the moment you told that pompous collector that his medieval manuscript was a 19th century forgery and you could prove it." Willa laughed, remembering the incident. He was so offended. "He was a fool, and you were brilliant." Lucien's hands came up to frame her face. "I love your intelligence, your passion for history, the way you see beauty in old things. I love your courage and your stubbornness and the way you stood up to Isolde tonight when you could have hidden behind me. I love everything about you, and I will spend however long we have making sure you know it." Then he was kissing her again, and this time there was no holding back. His hands found the fastenings of her gown, and the fabric pooled at her feet. She worked at his shirt buttons with less grace, but he helped her, pulling the garment off and tossing it aside. When his cool skin pressed against hers, Willa gasped. He was everywhere, hands, mouth, body, claiming her with a thoroughness that left no doubt about his feelings. And when they finally came together completely, moving as one in the firelight, it felt like coming home. Later, wrapped in silk sheets with Lucien's arms around her, Willa traced patterns on his chest. "Can you sleep?" "I can, though I don't need to the way you do. But I enjoy it sometimes, dreaming, resting." "Why?" "I want you to stay. I don't want to wake up alone." His arms tightened around her. "I'll stay. I'd stay forever if you'd let me." "What happens now? With Constantine in the court?" Lucien sighed. "Constantine will continue to be a problem. He'll push boundaries, look for ways to undermine my authority. But he won't move openly against me. He knows he'd lose. The real danger is more subtle threats. Court politics, alliances shifting, possible attempts to drive a wedge between us. How do we stop that? By being unmovable, by showing the court that we're united, that their machinations won't work." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "And by me being absolutely ruthless with anyone who tries to harm you. Fear is useful, even if it's not ideal." Willa thought about that. Can you keep ruling if people only obey you out of fear? Fear and respect aren't mutually exclusive. Most of my court respects my leadership, my decisions, my strength, but they also fear what I could do if provoked. That combination is what maintains order. He pulled back to look at her. "Does that bother you? Knowing I can be ruthless?" "You've never been anything but gentle with me," Willa said, "and I saw you defend me tonight. I know what you're capable of, but I also know you choose when and how to use that capability. That's not cruelty, that's control. You have more faith in me than I deserve. I have exactly the amount of faith you've earned." She kissed his jaw. "Stop arguing with me about whether you're good enough. I've decided you are, and I'm very stubborn." He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "I've noticed. It's one of my favorite things about you." They lay in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling softly. Finally, Willa asked the question that had been nagging at her. "Your wife, the one Isolde mentioned. Will you tell me about her?" Lucien went still. For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then, "Her name was Catherine. I met her in 1821 in Paris. She was the daughter of a bookshop owner, and she shared your passion for history. We had 11 years together before the illness took her." "What was she like?" "Kind, curious. She asked endless questions about my past, about the things I'd seen. She made me feel less alone in the world." His voice was distant, remembering. "When she died, I wanted to follow her, but I was too much of a coward to end my own existence, so I just shut down. Stopped feeling, stopped engaging with anything beyond the bare minimum required to rule. For nearly 200 years, I existed, but didn't really live." "Until I came along," Willa said quietly. "Until you came along and reminded me what it felt like to want something, to hope for something." He turned to face her fully. "I want you to know what I feel for you isn't about replacing Catherine. You're not a substitute for her. You're entirely yourself, and I love you for who you are." "I'm not jealous of her," Willa said. "How could I be? She was important to you, and her memory shaped who you became. I'm grateful she had those years with you, even if they ended sadly." "You're extraordinary," Lucien breathed, pulling her closer. "Truly extraordinary." Willa fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than she'd ever felt in her life. She woke to sunlight streaming through the enchanted window. False light, she remembered, but it still made her feel better. Lucien was awake, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. "Good morning," she murmured. "Good evening," he corrected with a smile. "You slept most of the day. It's nearly sunset." Willa stretched, luxuriating in the feel of silk sheets and Lucien's cool skin against hers. "I should probably get dressed, figure out what happens next." "What happens next is I feed you breakfast or dinner, I suppose, and we discuss your safety protocols." "Safety protocols? You can't stay underground forever. At some point you'll want to return to your life, your job, your apartment. We need to establish security measures to keep you safe when you're in the human world." His expression became serious. "Constantine may have accepted the claim publicly, but that doesn't mean he won't try to use you against me in subtler ways." Over a meal in Lucien's private dining room, he watched her eat with fascination, as if he'd forgotten what human food looked like they planned. Willa would return to her apartment, but with modifications. Wards would be placed on her home, protection spells that would alert Lucien if anyone tried to harm her. She'd have guards, vampires loyal to Lucien who would watch from the shadows, and she'd carry a pendant he gave her, spelled to summon him instantly if she was in danger. "It feels like a lot," Willa admitted. "It's necessary. At least until the court settles and Constantine stops looking for angles." Lucien took her hand. "I know it changes your life. I know it's intrusive, but I can't lose you. I understand. I don't want to be locked away, you know? I have a life, a career I care about. And you'll keep it. I'm not trying to cage you. I'm just trying to make sure you're safe enough to live that life." He paused. "Though there is one complication. You can't tell anyone about us, about what I am. It's one of our oldest laws. Humans who know about vampires and choose to be with us have to keep the secret. If you told anyone, it would put them in danger." Willa thought about her roommate, her colleagues at the museum, her family. "So I just lie to everyone?" "You tell them you're seeing someone, that he's private, that the relationship is new." "It's not entirely a lie." His expression was apologetic. "I know it's not ideal, but the alternative is bringing them into our world without their consent, making them targets." "Okay," Willa said after a moment. "I can do that. For now, at least." Over the next 2 weeks, they fell into a rhythm. Willa returned to her apartment, to her job at the museum, to the surface world. But her nights belonged to Lucien. He'd appear at sunset, sometimes at her apartment, sometimes whisking her away to the underground court or to hidden places throughout London he'd discovered over centuries. He showed her a private garden maintained by vampire horticulturists, where night-blooming flowers created a wonderland under moonlight. He took her to an ancient library hidden beneath a church, filled with manuscripts and books that dated back millennia. He introduced her to the complexities of vampire society, the families, the alliances, the unspoken rules that governed their world. And through it all, they grew closer. Willa learned the stories behind his scars, both physical and emotional. He told her about the wars he'd fought, the friends he'd lost, the mistakes that haunted him across centuries. She shared her own fears and dreams, her academic ambitions, her complicated relationship with her family. The museum staff noticed she seemed happier, more distracted. Her roommate teased her about the mysterious boyfriend who never seemed to be around during the day. But Willa kept the secret, protecting both Lucien and the life they were building together. Then, 3 weeks after the claiming ceremony, everything fell apart. Willa was working late at the museum, cataloging a new acquisition in the medieval section. The building was nearly empty, just her and security. She was so absorbed in translating a 13th century manuscript that she didn't notice the presence behind her until a hand clamped over her mouth. She tried to scream, but the hand was immovable. She was lifted off her feet, carried through hallways with inhuman speed. Panic flooded her system. The pendant she needed to activate the pendant. Her hand fumbled for it, but before she could grasp it, her attacker yanked it from her neck and tossed it aside. They burst through a service exit into the night. Willa caught a glimpse of her kidnapper, a vampire she recognized from court, one of Constantine's allies. Terror spiked through her. A car waited in the alley and she was thrown into the back. The door slammed, the car accelerated, and London blurred past the windows. She tried the door handle locked. She tried to break the window-reinforced glass that didn't even crack. "Where are you taking me?" she demanded, proud that her voice didn't shake too much. The vampire in the front seat didn't turn around. "Somewhere the king will have to come for you. Somewhere we can finally have the conversation he's been avoiding." Constantine's voice. Ice flooded Willa's veins. "This won't work," she said. "Lucien will kill you for this." "Perhaps. Or perhaps he'll realize his attachment to you is exactly the weakness we've been saying it is. Perhaps he'll choose his throne over his human pet." Constantine's voice was cold. Either way, things will change. The car drove for what felt like hours, though it was probably less. Finally, they pulled up to an abandoned warehouse on the Thames. Willa was hauled out, half dragged through a rusted door into a space filled with shadows and decay. They tied her to a chair in the center of the empty warehouse. Constantine stood in front of her, flanked by 3 other vampires. In the dim light, they all looked monstrous, pale, angular, their eyes reflecting like animals. "The king will come for you," Constantine said. "That pendant you wore had tracking magic woven into it. He probably already knows you're missing, and when he arrives, we'll be waiting." "Why are you doing this?" Willa asked. "What do you hope to accomplish?" "A reckoning." Constantine began to pace. "Lucien has ruled for too long, grown too complacent. He makes decisions based on sentiment rather than strength. He's forgotten what we are, predators, not protectors of humanity. His claiming you is the final proof that he's unfit to lead. So you're using me to force a challenge? I'm using you to prove a point. When he comes here, frantic and desperate, he'll show the court exactly how compromised he is, and then they'll understand that change is necessary." Willa's mind raced. "The court won't follow you. They're loyal to Lucien. They're loyal to power, and I intend to prove I'm the stronger choice." Constantine stopped pacing, his eyes fixed on the warehouse entrance. "He'll be here soon. Are you prepared to watch him fall, little human, to see what happens when a king values love over survival?" Before Willa could answer, the warehouse door exploded inward, not opened, exploded, ripped from its hinges by invisible force. Lucien stood in the doorway, and he was terrifying. His eyes blazed red, brighter than Willa had ever seen them. Power radiated from him in waves that made the air shimmer. His fangs were fully extended, and his expression was nothing short of murderous. "Let her go," he said, his voice carrying unnatural resonance. "Now." Constantine smiled. "There he is, the mighty king, brought low by attachment to a mortal. Look at yourself, Lucien. You're barely in control. You came here alone, didn't you? No guards, no backup, just you and your desperate need to save her." "I don't need guards to handle you." Lucien took a step forward and the temperature dropped. "I'm giving you one chance to walk away from this. Release Willa, leave London, and I'll let you live. That offer expires in 5 seconds. "I don't think you're in a position to make demands." Constantine gestured, and his allies moved to flank Willa. "One wrong move, and we'll show you exactly how fragile humans are." Lucien went utterly still, and for a moment, Willa saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not for himself, for her. "Don't," she said quickly. "Don't give him what he wants. Don't compromise yourself for me." Lucien's gaze met hers across the warehouse, and the anguish in his expression broke her heart. "I can't lose you. You won't. I trust you." And she did. Despite the danger, despite the vampires surrounding her, she trusted Lucien completely. Something shifted in his expression. The fear melted away, replaced by cold calculation. When he looked back at Constantine, he was every inch the king who'd ruled for 3 centuries. "You've made a critical error," Lucien said softly. "You assumed my love for Willa makes me weak, but it doesn't. It makes me absolutely ruthless." Then he moved. Willa had seen vampires move fast before, but this was different. Lucien was a blur of motion, impossible to track. One of Constantine's allies flew across the warehouse before he could even scream, hitting the far wall with bone-shattering force. Another tried to grab Willa, but Lucien was there, ripping him away and throwing him through a support beam. Constantine himself lunged, and the two kings collided in a clash that shook the building. They moved too fast for Willa to follow just glimpses of violence, the sound of impact, growls that barely sounded human. The third vampire advanced on Willa, fangs bared, but before he could reach her, Seraphine appeared out of nowhere, intercepting him. More vampires poured into the warehouse. Lucien's allies, Willa realized. Dorian was there, and others she recognized from court. The tide turned quickly. Constantine's allies were outnumbered, outmatched. Within minutes they were subdued, held by Lucien's guards. Only Constantine remained fighting, locked in combat with Lucien. But even he was losing. Lucien was too strong, too fast, too utterly merciless. He landed a blow that sent Constantine crashing to the concrete, then followed up, pinning him there with a hand around his throat. "You wanted to prove I was weak," Lucien said, his voice carrying through the now silent warehouse. "But all you've proven is that you don't understand what strength really means. I love her, yes. But that love doesn't diminish me. It focuses me. Makes me more dangerous, not less. Because now I have something worth protecting, and I will destroy anyone who threatens it." Constantine struggled, but Lucien's grip was unbreakable. "You can't kill me. The court won't. The court will accept it. Because you broke the oldest law, you threatened what a king has claimed. That's an executable offense, and every vampire here knows it." Lucien's eyes blazed. "I'm going to make an example of you, so that no one ever makes this mistake again." "Lucien," Willa called out, her voice cutting through the tension. "Don't kill him." He froze, looking at her in shock. "What?" "Don't kill him, not because he deserves mercy, but because I don't want you to have to carry that. You said killing him would make an example, but so would mercy. Show the court you're strong enough to spare an enemy who's already lost." Constantine laughed bitterly. "The human pleads for my life. How touching." "Shut up," Lucien growled, not looking away from Willa. "You really want me to spare him after what he did to you? I want you to be the leader you actually are, not the one he tried to force you to become. You're not cruel, Lucien. You're just. So be just." For a long moment, Lucien stared at her. Then he looked down at Constantine. "You hurt her. The human you tried to use against me just saved your miserable life." He released Constantine and stood. "You're exiled. You and anyone who stood with you tonight. Leave London and never return. If I so much as sense your presence in my city again, mercy won't be an option." Constantine climbed to his feet, looking stunned. "You're really letting me go?" "I'm honoring my lady's wishes. Don't make me regret it." Lucien gestured to his guards. "Escort them to the city limits. Make sure they leave." As Constantine and his allies were marched out, Seraphine cut through Willa's restraints. She rubbed her wrists, trying to process everything that had just happened. Then Lucien was there, pulling her into his arms. He was shaking, actually shaking. "Are you hurt? Did they harm you?" "I'm okay, just scared." She clung to him. "How did you find me so fast?" "The pendant has tracking magic, but also I felt it when it was removed. The bond between us, the claim, it lets me sense when you're in danger." He pulled back to look at her, his hands framing her face. "I thought I'd lost you. For those minutes between sensing your fear and getting here, I thought, I'm here. I'm safe. Because of you." She kissed him softly. "You saved me. You saved yourself. You kept him talking, bought time, stayed calm." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "And then you saved me from becoming the monster he wanted me to be. Sparing him was the right choice, even if every instinct screamed to end him for touching you." Seraphine appeared beside them. "We should return to the court. Word of tonight will spread quickly, and you'll want to control the narrative." Back at the underground court, Lucien called an emergency gathering. Vampires filled the chamber, buzzing with speculation about the attack and its aftermath. When Lucien took his throne with Willa beside him, silence fell. "Tonight, Constantine and his allies attempted to use violence and kidnapping to challenge my authority," Lucien announced, his voice carrying through the space. "They failed, not only because they were outmatched, but because their fundamental assumption was wrong. They believed my love for Willa Ashford was a weakness, but it's the opposite. It's what makes me stronger, more focused, more certain of my purpose. He stood, looking out over his assembled court. I've ruled you for over 3 centuries. I've kept this court safe, prosperous, and respected among vampire society, but I've also been distant, cold. I performed my duties but kept myself apart emotionally. Willa changed that. She reminded me that strength without purpose is empty, that power without connection is hollow. His hand found Willa's, pulling her to stand beside him. Some of you will see this as weakness. Those of you who do are welcome to leave my court. But for those who stay, know this: I am more committed to protecting what we've built than I've ever been. Because now I remember what I'm protecting it for. Not just survival, but the chance to build something worth surviving for. Silence. Then Dorian started clapping. Others joined in, the applause building until the chamber echoed with it. Not everyone participated. A few vampires slipped away, disapproval clear in their expressions. But the majority stayed, their support evident. After the gathering dissolved, Seraphine pulled Willa aside. That was well done, both the mercy and the public declaration. You've made him better, you know, more complete. He's made me better too, Willa said, braver, more willing to stand up for what I believe in. Good. You'll need that courage. Not all opposition will be as obvious as Constantine. Seraphine's expression became serious. There will be subtler challenges, but you've proven you can handle them. Over the following weeks, the court stabilized. Those loyal to Lucien remained, while those who'd supported Constantine's faction quietly left London. New alliances formed, and gradually the tension eased. Willa found herself drawn deeper into vampire society. She attended court functions, learned the protocols and politics, made friends among Lucien's allies. Her work at the museum continued, but now with a new dimension. She could ask Lucien about historical events and get first-hand accounts. One night, about 2 months after the kidnapping, Lucien took her to the roof of a building he owned, high above London. The city sprawled below them, lights glittering like stars. "I've been thinking," he said, wrapping his arms around her from behind, "about the future, about what this relationship means long-term." Willa's heart clenched. "What about it?" "You're mortal. You'll age while I don't. Eventually that gap will become visible, uncomfortable. People will notice." He paused. "There's a way to change that, if you wanted." "You mean turning me, making me a vampire?" "Yes. It's not something to decide lightly. It's permanent, and there are drawbacks. You'd never see sunlight again. You'd outlive everyone you know. Your family, your friends, you'd have to watch them age and die." Willa turned in his arms to face him. "But I'd have you, for as long as we both exist. Yes, you'd have me. Forever if you wanted." His expression was carefully neutral, giving her space to decide without pressure. She thought about it carefully. Her human life, which had seemed so important, now felt small compared to what she'd found with Lucien. Her family was distant. They had never been particularly close. Her friends were mostly colleagues, relationships built on convenience rather than depth. But Lucien, the court, this strange new world, it felt like home in a way nothing else ever had. I want forever," she said quietly. "I want to stand beside you, not just for a human lifetime, but for centuries. I want to learn everything about your world, to build a life that spans ages rather than decades." Relief and joy flooded Lucien's features. "You're certain? This isn't a decision you can undo." "I've never been more certain of anything." She cupped his face. "Turn me. Make me yours in every way possible." "Not tonight," he said, kissing her softly. "This is something that requires preparation, ritual. I want to do it properly, with the court present, making you not just my partner but my recognized equal. Will you give me time to arrange it?" "However long you need." 3 months later, on the winter solstice, Willa stood in the court chamber wearing a gown of deep crimson. The entire court had gathered, filling the space with hundreds of vampires. But she only had eyes for Lucien, who stood before his throne in ceremonial robes that looked like they were from another century. "Willa Ashford," he said formally, his voice carrying through the chamber, "you have chosen to join our kind, to forsake your mortal life and embrace immortality. Do you understand the weight of this choice?" "I do," she answered clearly. Do you accept the responsibilities that come with our nature? The need to feed, to hide, to exist in shadows? I do. And do you choose this freely without coercion of your own will and desire? I do. Lucien descended from the dais, a ceremonial blade in his hand. Then, by the old laws and the authority vested in me as king of this court, I grant you the dark gift. May you walk forever in the night, strong and eternal. He drew the blade across his palm, blood welling up darker than human blood, almost black in the candlelight. Then he pressed his bleeding palm to her lips. Willa drank, and the world exploded. Power flooded through her veins, burning and freezing simultaneously. She felt her heart stutter, her human body beginning to die as something new took its place. Lucien caught her as her legs gave out, cradling her against his chest as the transformation racked her body. It hurt. God, it hurt worse than anything she'd imagined. Every cell was being rewritten, every system shutting down and rebooting as something other than human. She might have screamed, she couldn't tell. Time became meaningless, just endless waves of agony and change. Then, finally, it stopped. Willa opened her eyes and the world was different, sharper, clearer, more vivid. She could hear heartbeats from humans on the street far above, could smell the stone and candle wax and the complex scent of every vampire in the chamber, could see in perfect detail, even in the dim light. And she was strong. She could feel power humming through her body, controlled but immense. "How do you feel?" Lucien asked softly, still holding her. "Incredible," she breathed. "Is it always like this?" "The intensity fades as you learn to control it, but yes, the world is always more alive when you're immortal." He helped her stand. "Can you feel the hunger yet?" Now that he mentioned it, yes, a burning awareness of the human heartbeats above, a desire that was primal and overwhelming. "It's strong. I'll teach you to control it, to feed without harming. But for now," he gestured, and Seraphine approached with a crystal goblet filled with dark liquid. "Blood," Willa realized. "Drink. It will help stabilize you." The blood tasted like nothing she'd ever experienced, rich and complex and satisfying in a way that went beyond physical. It eased the burning hunger, bringing clarity. When she lowered the goblet, Lucien was watching her with such love it made her chest ache, or would have if her heart still beat. "Welcome to immortality," he said. "Welcome to forever." The court erupted in applause, vampires calling out congratulations and welcome. Willa looked out at them, at these beings who were now her people, her kind. She saw Dorian grinning, Seraphine nodding approval, dozens of faces that had become familiar over the past months. She turned back to Lucien, this man, this vampire who had become her entire world. "I love you," she said, "for now and forever." "Forever," he agreed, and kissed her in front of the entire court, making official what had been true for months: they belonged to each other completely. Later, much later, after the celebration had wound down and they'd retired to Lucien's chambers, Willa stood at the enchanted window watching the false sunrise. She didn't need the illusion anymore. She'd never see real sunlight again. But it was beautiful nonetheless. Lucien wrapped his arms around her from behind. "Any regrets?" "None." And she meant it. She'd given up a human life that had been perfectly ordinary for something extraordinary. She'd chosen love and danger and immortality, and she'd never been happier. "What do you want to do with eternity?" Lucien asked. "We have infinite time now, infinite possibilities." Willa thought about it. "I want to keep learning. History, languages, cultures. I want to travel to all the places you've been, see them through your eyes. I want to help you rule this court, be a real partner in it." She turned in his arms. "And I want to spend every night falling more in love with you." "That sounds perfect," he murmured against her hair. "Though I should warn you, immortality isn't always easy. There will be hard times, losses, challenges we can't foresee." "I know, but we'll face them together." She pulled back to look at him. "That's what you were shielding me from, wasn't it? At the gala, when you tried to drive me away, you weren't being cruel. You were trying to protect me from exactly what happened with Constantine, from the danger of your world." "Yes. I thought if I hurt you enough, you'd leave and be safe. But I underestimated you." His thumb traced her cheekbone. "You were never going to be safe once I noticed you. Once my enemies realized you mattered. The only real safety was bringing you fully into my world, making you strong enough to defend yourself. I'm glad you failed at driving me away, Willa said. I'm glad I was stubborn enough to see through your cruelty to the protection underneath. So am I. He kissed her softly. So am I. They stood there together, Vampire King and his newly turned queen, watching the false sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Outside, London was waking up to a new day, but for them, the day was ending, night falling as it would for every day of their immortal lives. And Willa had never been more content. She'd found something rare and precious, a love that would last centuries, a partnership built on trust and passion and mutual protection. She'd stumbled into a hidden world and found her place in it. The Vampire King had tried to shield her with cruelty, but she'd seen through it to the terrified heart underneath. She'd chosen danger and immortality and him, and she'd received forever in return. It was, she thought as Lucien pulled her closer, the best decision she'd ever made. Years passed, decades, then a full century. Willa grew into her power, learning to control the hunger, the strength, the immortality that had once seemed so overwhelming. She became a fixture in vampire society, respected not just as Lucien's partner, but as a leader in her own right. They traveled the world together, visiting the places of Lucien's past and creating new memories. They faced challenges, political upheavals, conflicts with other vampire courts, the ongoing complexity of existing in a modern world while bound by ancient laws. But they faced them together, united in purpose and love. The British Museum gained a new benefactor, anonymous but generous, who donated artifacts and funded research. Willa couldn't work there anymore. She couldn't explain why she never aged, but she could still contribute to the field she loved. And every night when the sun set and they rose to face another evening of immortal existence, Lucien would pull her close and remind her that she was his greatest treasure, that in 800 years of existence she remained the best thing that had ever happened to him. Willa would kiss him and feel grateful for his love, for the immortal life she'd chosen, for the courage to see past his warning to the protection underneath. She'd mistaken his cruelty for rejection when it had really been the desperate act of someone trying to save her from his dangerous world. But she'd saved herself by refusing to leave, by demanding to understand rather than running away. And in doing so, she'd saved him too from loneliness, from the cold existence he'd endured for 2 centuries, from forgetting what it meant to truly live rather than just exist. They had forever now, and they intended to make every night of it count.